I mean, I don't normally swear that much. I don't know why it just came out of me like that.
It's because someone told you not to.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball podcast. In this episode, we're going to recap the events of the 8th annual Seattle Classic, which took place this past weekend. Here to help me cover what took place is Lu Cas Boyle, Allyn Thomas, and Britt Daughtry. Guys, thank you so much for being willing to hop on and spend some of your evening with me. I'm really looking forward to discussing the events of what took place. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll start with Lucas. Why don't you go ahead and just real quick give me your name, the team that you played for during the tournament, and what role you had for the tournament overall.
Hi, this is Lu Cas Boyle. I played for Not Safe for Work. My goal was to ruin Allyn Thomas's day, and I was also the event organizer.
Nice. And Allyn, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Allyn Thomas. I played on Reignbros for this tournament. We were the champions, and I did not help organize.
Nice. And Britt?
Hey, I'm Britt Daughtry. This tournament I played with Chicago Task Force, and actually half our team was not even from Chicago, and so my role on the team, I filled in for the ladies that weren't there. All of our ladies were from the Northwest, so yeah, we were there to catch some balls and kick some butt.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, again, I appreciate you guys for joining me, and let's just dive right in. So one of the first questions that I had for you, Lucas, was what's the origin of this tournament? It's the 8th one, but what is the Seattle Classic exactly?
Yeah, I think the first one was in 2011. This was really the first competitive event in Seattle dodgeball history. At that time, we had two major pickup scenes, and so this was a way for those two scenes to make teams and kind of duke it out for dodgeball supremacy in the city. It was also the first time that we interacted with players outside of the city. So teams from Portland started coming up and playing with us, and so this event was kind of a lot of exposure for players inside of the pickup scenes in Seattle to meet other pickup players across town, and also the Portlanders. I think the first 6 years. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First 5 years, teams from Oregon won the championship, including Beaver Dam Nation, who was a bunch of dodgeball players from Oregon State University, and they also played a ton of NDL dodgeball. They came and won it 3 times in the first 5 years. There was another team, Thronan the Barbarians, who is from Recess Time, Portland dodgeball, and they will be forever legends in Seattle because they just mopped the floor with everyone there. They were incredible. And I think the other champion in that first 5 years was Dodgy Style, which is another, legendary Portland team. And they crushed it. They came from kind of the lower seed to win it, and they won decisively. So yeah, the Classic has been kind of I don't know, Bert and Allyn could chime in on this, but it's been kind of the competitive pinnacle of dodgeball in the Northwest, but at the same time kind of managing to maintain some of the fun and community aspects of dodgeball.
Where were you when you first played in the Classic? Where were you in your dodgeball career?
Well, this is my 3rd Classic, and I started off foam, and then I transitioned to rubber, and I would say that my first Classic was very early on in my rubber career, and it's incredible, and it has always been the highlight of my year for dodgeball. And I would say that until Portlanders and Seattle people started doing Elite, that this was the tournament to go to every year.
I definitely agree with that. When I played in my first one, when I was still on Street Fighters, it was at the time I first went the biggest tournament I'd ever gone to. And the first time you played was with me. The year before that, I got 2nd, and then we got 4th, and then we got 2nd again when we played together. So we've been in the top when we've played. So it's a big tournament for us for sure.
So I have a question for you guys. This is Lu Cas speaking to the two Portlanders. Like, what's kind of the what's like the perception of the Classic in Portland? Like, what kind of players from the Portland scene participate in it, and how is it perceived?
From my perspective here, the Classic, because it's been around so long, isn't just a draw for like the current super hardcore elite players, but you also see the players like Sofa and Shar who, they don't play all the nights we have to play, they don't play all the leagues we have to play, but they make a point to come to this tournament every year because they've been doing it so long and they love it.
Yeah, it's extremely fun, and I think you can convince almost anyone from the Portland dodgeball scene, or at least the rubber scene, to come up to Seattle because they're going to have a good time, and it's a great product. It's going to be one of the best tournaments you're going to participate in for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the first 3 years I was involved, I was not an event organizer, but what I did was I hosted a player draft. So I was responsible for creating a free agent player pool, and out of that we would create all of the Seattle teams, and which was super fun, except that we got
shame
kicked. So I think at a certain point we were like, God,
shame.
Oh, sorry, Steven. We were like, why don't we make all-star teams so we can protect the title from the Portlanders? And it took us, many years to actually make that happen. But yeah, it's definitely it's a lot of fun to host the tournament, and it's so much fun when it was so much fun to meet all the Portland dodgeballers, and it took a few years before adversaries became friends, and kind of all of that silly friction worked itself out of our system. But now we're getting to experience that with the teams that are coming down from Vancouver, British Columbia, and Surrey, Canada, and even over the last few years, Fury came up from the Bay Area. Nate Kreider and Payan came with Rolina and Ryan Morris last year, and Kelly has come up here. Billy Schmidt came up with Bangarang a few years with Eric Jones and Don Leon. There's been a nice who's who of cameos from some of the best players in the West at this tournament. So it's always fun to kind of see who's going to come this year. And this year, Task Force blessed us with their presence.
Nice, all the way out from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. And what are they? What are you guys playing for? Is it money, medals, pride? Is there? It's just for fun. Is there a specific prize that's associated with this?
I would say a couple of those things. Sorry, to speak for you, Lu Cas, when you won it, you were playing for the pride of your city. to win that back from the Portland teams all those years. And this came up in the recent episode, you may know, Lu Cas, from the Book of Dodgeball with David Tates, and his probably his most prideful win, at least from what I've seen of him, was when they first won the Classic.
Yeah, you cried, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
I remember that
part. I've been teaching for the last few years, and I'm very honest with my students. I say, hey, I play a lot of dodgeball, and when I show them the photo of me crying, I say, hey, this is me crying after I won the most important tournament of my life, and I want this to be a classroom where you're comfortable being emotional or whatever. I'm very proud of that moment, and I'll always remember it joyfully.
What?
But yeah.
Go ahead.
To go to your question, there's never been a cash prize. There's always been. I think this year was the exception. We didn't have too many awesome things, but in the past we've had some really cool artists in our community make awards. One of the awards that is handed down year to year is a leather kind of almost pro wrestling style championship belt.
Nice.
That a leather artist made for us. It's incredible. One year, one of our guys chiseled numbers into solid steel and cut it out into puzzle pieces that were then turned into necklaces, and each player on the first, second, and third place teams got a puzzle piece that went into it. So there's always been a lot of creativity, and And we also give out like diplomas that look like high school or college diplomas to the champions, and they get their names signed on them, and it looks all official and silly and fun. And yeah, there's a lot of good spirit. There's no cash. It's definitely like Dodge glory and storytelling fodder for years to come.
My two favorite prizes were similar to the puzzle piece, but one year Mark Fassy made a bottle opener, and it was like a 6-inch long slab of metal that he carved SDC and then like second for the second place. We were second place that year. And then on the end, it had the little cutout for a bottle opener. You could pop a bottle cap off with it. It was awesome. And then that same year, I won the Joust, and my prize was a hand-me-down second expansion of Cards Against Humanity.
How about you, Britt? Have you had any good takeaways from your experience playing, trophy-wise? Or
you mean in terms of? Well, I would say that one thing that you get out of this tournament that is incredible is amazing photography. Everybody changes their profile pic about halfway through the week after the Seattle Classic because they just do amazing action shots. And so when you come to the Classic, you're almost guaranteed to have just an epic picture waiting for you halfway through the week, and that you're just going to covet for probably the rest of the year because it's going to just show you in your best form playing dodgeball.
In the past years, I can't say enough about how great Tino Tran photography has done. Just like you said, epic shots of the action of the game.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think for the longest time, like the photos from the Classic were like the best dodgeball photos anywhere in the world. Like they were incredible, and he actually moved out of state this year, and so it was so heartbreaking. But the photos are coming in, so we'll see how they look this year.
Nice. And so, Lucas, you've been playing in this tournament the longest, right? Did I hear that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start playing?
The first one was in 2011.
Okay.
But I was playing I've been playing for a few years before that, so I've been playing since 2007.
Gotcha. I'm glad you mentioned the, what do you call it? That broken metal thing with necklace, because I have one. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I played in the 2013
That's
Classic.
right.
So
Yep.
I was trying to find a picture because you're right, Britt. I do have my epic photo, and it's a picture of me when I played with Damnation with Patrick Goodman, and we were, I think it might have been the finals of the game prior, and there's just something about, I found it. Probably it's not going to do any good for the audio version, but yeah, I just wanted to echo, like, that's one of those things, like, oh man, I love this photo because it's got in the background, you can see Brandon Cook. I'm just trying to see if I can find like another cameo of like Lucas maybe back there. But when I played in that tournament, and I don't want to like offend anybody, but when I heard about it, I thought it was just like a fun recreational tournament because Kevin Pack had sold it to me the year prior, saying, oh, it's like this great event, there's all these players, it's competitive, you have great music, you have some funny DJs and MCs and whatnot, and it just sounded like a really awesome event. And when I played in 2013, sure enough, it definitely was. And I remember this team from Seattle beat us, and I was just so shocked because I did not expect that to happen. And I wonder if you guys might remember what team that would have been. Maybe that's more of a question for you, Lucas. Kind of a segue, but
yeah, you know what? I have a couple of questions actually for you, Steve. Like, you know what came up this year is like teams were looking for free agents like up until the last minute, and someone was like, "Hey, like Stephen Damon from Portland is looking for a team," and like people still remember you from that tournament. Like they all assume that you're from Portland because you played on Beaver Dam Nation.
Oh, that's funny.
So like your name came out, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed, and I was like, oh, I gotta share that with him when we talk.
Nice. I hope people still think I live in Portland. Just for
a couple other things I wanted to say that we've done that kind of like I think add to the character of the tournament is one of our organizers, Matthew Brennan, is like a performance artist and has a lot of friends who are performers, and one of the things they do is they are like pro wrestling announcers, like in the Seattle scene. And so those guys used to sit courtside, and they didn't know much about dodgeball, but they were entertainers, and they would do the, oh my gosh, he got slammed with the ball, like, and they would just do play-by-play for the semifinals and the finals. And it definitely kind of keeps the audience engaged. And I think another one of my favorite awards, which I was super pissed that I didn't win, but we made these like punk jackets. We made like jean jackets for the entire championship team, and I designed like logos for every team that didn't have a logo, and we screen printed onto like canvas patches, and we like cut them out and sewed them. Whitney Pittman, shout out to you. She sewed like many hours of patches on these jean jackets. And so each champion player got a jean jacket. And that is one of the awards that I wish that I had won, because I would have rocked that with pride.
That's awesome. Dang,
but Steve, my question to you is, how did you end up on that team?
Oh man, long story short, I've just known Kevin for a very long time. And like since 2006, and so without getting too into my personal life, I was dating somebody that was familiar with them, and so that's kind of how I met Kevin, Pack, and all them, and we just had that mutual passion for dodgeball, and he just told me you should come up and play with Damnation for a little bit, and it was cool to kind of just break away from Team Evil and Tucson for a little bit and just try something new. And so Seattle, traveling up there didn't seem like a bad idea, so I went for it and had a blast, and always enjoyed playing with the Oregon guys. And it's always fun seeing James Alston when he comes down for Elite. It's good seeing Brandon, and still like one of the few OGs out there still waiting for the day that Kevin Pack might join the Elite craze, so I'm kind of hoping for that to happen.
Let me tell you, we tried.
I think everybody's tried. This is a low-key way of me trying. Just tell Kevin Elite needs his Falcon Punch.
Call me.
Oh, man. But, yeah, just kind of a... What's up?
I have found out who the team was that beat you, and it was a Portland team. You guys lost in the championship, and that was to Dodgy Style. And they're probably one of the more notorious champions of this tournament.
Notorious is a good way to put it. Your piano edit over that final is amazing.
Piano edit?
Oh, God. But Steve, I guess one of the things we could talk about is maybe what the rules are, because I think now that Elite is kind of standardizing rubber 8.5 rules, even I noticed how wonky some of our rules were this year. But historically, we've played 23-foot throw lines. The courts every season up until this year have been 70 feet wide. So there's been a 20-something foot neutral zone. So there's just a huge neutral zone. There's been back walls on both sides. So you get a lot of rebounds. There's a lot of sloppy, messy play. One of the big variations that we have up here in the Northwest is when a ball hits you, you're kind of a dead player walking. So you've got to catch or save that ball before you can do anything else. And that's a big difference from kind of the Elite rule, which is you're not dead until that first ball dies.
Right.
We also play with soft boundaries, so you can step on boundary lines as long as you're not completely over them. Standing headshots are illegal. Active stance is illegal. If it's not clear, we're going to call it a headshot. I think this year we were slapping beer garden bracelets on anyone who got a headshot, and if you got 4 headshots in the day, you
won.
What's that, Britt?
Oh, if you threw a headshot, not if you got them, because I would have had a few wrist rounds if it was for how many headshots you received.
Yeah, it was kind of you were being scolded. You were sent to the organizer's table to get a beer garden wristband, and later on, everyone knew you had the mark of shame on you. But I don't know. I don't think anyone got more than 1 or 2. So that that worked out. But yeah, so the rules are they kind of evolved as the event evolved. But I think next year we might kind of transition to a lot of the elite rules just for simplicity's sake and keep everyone's brains from exploding from switching from so many rule sets all the time.
Yeah, but that's fun making that switch, that transition. Cool. So I mean, it's still fun sounding, but it's getting a little more competitive. And gone are the days where like I'm the only person that's coming out of town. I mean, people all the way from Chicago are showing up, and you're getting some more Arizona and LA pool and whatnot. So it sounds like next year's probably going to be more of the same. But let's go ahead and kind of just talk about the teams. And maybe Allyn, you can start with this one. Were there any teams that stood out from your perspective?
I actually thought that a couple did. Yeah, the OSU team has been coming for years. There's kind of an evolution of OSU teams. We all know Beaver Damnation. I mean, Beaver's in the name. Then for a while there was Beaver Salvation, which was kind of like the second younger generation team. But for the last couple of years, there's been the OSU Dodgeball Club, which is kind of the current kids that are going there, and maybe like one or two alums from pretty recent. And this year, I thought they really, in the bracket especially, they really stepped their games up. And some young kids, not necessarily all super organized. They usually bring a team with like 5 subs on it, but during the bracket, they had their stuff together. A shout out to Double Tap, which is captained by one of my best friends, Keith Nelson, who plays on Double Tap in Elite. They brought a good chunk of their team with some good fill-ins from Portland for people they were missing, and they made it pretty far in the bracket too. We have the list here, Lu Cas. Thanks for putting that together. They came in 5th, tied with Toon Squad. So I'd say those two teams really stood out to me.
Nice. And how about you, Britt?
Yeah, well, for this year, something that was very obviously different was that we had 2 full elite teams that had just played the weekend prior. Yep. So they were very organized, extremely competitive, and as anybody would have anticipated, they finished 1st and 3rd. And that was Reignbros and Portland Downpour. So that was something that stood out a lot, of course. But other than that, I was very pleased to see that Seattle teams that have been together for a long time, Toon Squad and Dano, have since I started playing, they have improved significantly. If they continue to stay together and stay organized, they're going to be great teams in the future as well. And then I guess lastly, there were 2 Canadian teams where last year, I think they were just a mashup of phone players, but this year they definitely brought it. I was extremely surprised by Surrey Dodgeball League. They had really solid players. They gave Task Force a run for their money on some games. So, yeah, very impressive team showed up. But also, there were just a lot of teams this year, too. I didn't even get to play Reignbros or didn't get to play Downpour until the brackets. So, yeah, very fun.
To piggyback on that, the VDL team last year was here for the beers. And it was like a 16-person team that was just, they were just getting lit up. But the other group brought a team last year, and they gave it their shot. But this year they definitely came much more prepared. They have a very different rule set up there, and you could tell that they'd given some serious thought to what adjustments needed to be made to play the style we play as opposed to what they play.
Nice. And then
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, teams that stood out to me, I think definitely a bunch of the ones you mentioned. I think I want to shout out Grunge Green, which is a brand new Seattle team. This is their first tournament ever. They seeded 4th, which it was incredible. Like, I couldn't believe it. So that team is captained by Rob Stiles, who used to play No Sting in LA and has been up in Seattle for the last couple of years. And he was just, he was like, let me throw a team together out of kind of like some of the indie players up here. And so he put up a badass team. They won their first round matchup. Looks like they lost a close one to Downpour in the second round. And then they made like kind of a run in the losers bracket. They beat Surrey Dodgeball League, but then they lost to Double Tap, a team that also was down at Elite LA round 1. So they played really well. So I want to give a lot of credit to them because it is really hard to start a team, and your first tournament with a new team is also really hard. I also really appreciated the SDL and VDL teams because they never play rubber. They play 8.25 foam all year round. And last year they came down just not sure what to expect, and immediately they knew it was going to be tough sledding, so they just decided to have fun. And they don't have flight kills or eagles in their league, so they just eagled and flight killed nonstop. So last year was kind of like a circus, and this year they were like, no, we came here to compete. We want to win. And I think they were like tied for like 9th place. So they were in the top half of the bracket.
Did we establish how many teams there were total before we move on?
Yeah, this year there was 19 teams.
19, okay.
And 18 of them registered. One team notified us that they were not on the schedule like a few minutes before the captain's meeting, and I almost fainted. But luckily we've got a schedule guru, Bill Fisher, here, who plays for Deneau, and he's also an elite player on Fortune. And he figured it out. He found a way to insert a 19th team into the round robin schedule with like moments to spare, and Bill saved the day. So thank you, Bill. But yeah, 19 teams. Yeah, that's our biggest yet.
Nice.
So to ask Lu Cas, when you put up the registration on Facebook, it seemed to me that teams just all signed up immediately, and that it almost felt like the Seattle Classic was sold out within a week. At least that's how it seemed to me.
I mean, I could echo that.
That is the case. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like 10 days we hit our like 18 mark, which is like, that is so exciting, and that energizes you as an organizer to like put in the work when people show you that kind of love and interest.
So part of why I didn't make it was I thought, being the dodgeball player that I am, I had like all day long to assemble a team and find out if we're actually going to get some people from Phoenix and potentially Tucson to show up. And then before I knew it, it was sold out. So I was like, oh, okay, well, oops, definitely need to be faster next time. But yeah, it did feel like it sold out fast.
I do a little bit of back channel talking to my out-of-state captains where I give them a wink. So if
like a heads
any
up.
out-of-state folks, if you want to play in this tournament in the future, just hit me up. I will make sure we get you a spot in there. We love having visitors, and we love sharing our community with people from around the country.
Awesome. Real quick, what was SDL?
Surrey
SDL is,
Surrey Dodgeball League, and VDL
Surrey's just south of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And you know what's really funny is like we have kind of like played with Surrey and Vancouver for the last 2 years since they came down and played with us, and it's fun to. I think a lot of people outside of the Northwest kind of assume that Seattle and Portland are the same thing, and which like we always giggle about because like we've been like vicious rivals for years, and I think like we assumed the same thing about Surrey and Vancouver. We're just like, oh yeah, you're all the Vancouver guys, but we've come to recognize that no, like they're very distinct dodgeball communities, and from time to time there's some friction there, and so it's fun to see them come down and compete, and we made sure that we made a matchup for those two to play each other in the round robin.
Nice. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I peg Portland, Seattle for being all the same, so I do apologize for that, but that's definitely a thing, at least with me. I can't speak for anybody else in AZ, but it's a thing. And also, you mentioned an eagle. What is that? You mentioned a flight and an eagle.
Same thing as a flight kill, sometimes called a suicide.
Got it.
Just different phrases for the same thing.
I like eagle. That's pretty cool sounding. Cool. Well, I think we kind of covered a little bit it's pretty well as far as teams go, and we'll go ahead and start with Britt. Were there any players that you noticed that stood out overall?
Well, it's always nice to see new players that just kind of blow me away. And there was this one guy on Vancouver Dodgeball League who was just catching everything Chicago Task Force was throwing at him. He was throwing mad heat. I think that if he was up for traveling, doing competitive travel dodgeball league, I think some elite teams would do well to scout him. I was very impressed. And other than that, just there's some Seattle players that I've seen really grow. Yeah, I would have to say that everybody on Toon Squad has really surprised me. They used to be a team I could just feel like I could beat. Any team I was on, we could probably beat them, but now they will give you a run for their money.
Nice.
I'm trying to think of specifically, well, of course, Anthony. He's gotten incredible. You can't throw at that guy. He will catch you every time.
Anthony, last name?
Collins.
Collins?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on Fortune.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Lu Cas, if you could help me out with some other names. I'm blanking right now.
Got Luan. Let's see here. The tall guy, Tyson. He's playing.
Tyson, Tyson. It's really good. So I think, and I've played with Toon Squad, and if they continue to get organized, they're going to be like a very competitive Seattle team.
I think the guy you mean on, I think it was STL's, the taller guy with the white shirt.
Vancouver Dodgeball League.
Okay.
He's a taller, broader guy.
Yeah,
I got a photo. His name is Chris, and he is he's one of the legends up there. And their format is an incredibly short throw distance, and so you have to have incredible catching ability just to survive in that game. So it was really cool to see them come down and see the catching translate, because the balls are moving slower. They have more force, but they have more time, and so it was really cool to see what was going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely found catching a little bit easier this tournament than in Greece's time rubber dodgeball, because of the distance. There was more time to make those decisions of, am I going to catch this or am I going to dodge this?
Well, do you think having just come from Elite helped at all, Britt, with that?
Oh, I haven't played in Elite yet.
Oh, my mistake.
So it's okay.
How about you, Allyn?
Sorry to correct a correction there, but Britt, you technically did play Elite one time. When we had the Elite Northwest Renton tournament, actually that was when you played on Toon Squad. So,
very true.
And
I stand corrected.
I have my dodgeball historian self comes out again.
Awesome.
I actually really love the old long courts of the Classic. If you've watched me play, you know that I love to explode off the back line. And so the longer the court is, the bigger the neutral zone, the farther they have to run away. And that really played to my advantage when we had the longer courts. But even this year, they were still, I believe, 59-foot courts with a 20-foot throw line, which leaves a 6-foot neutral zone or something like that. So it was still that part of it really is great for me. I'm kind of an all-around player, so catching, it's when it happens, blocking, staying alive. The longer throw line benefits me because I'm not blowing anyone away anyway, no matter how close they are.
Nice. And did you have any players that stood out, or I think you kind of jumped in a little bit, but was there anybody else that you can recall?
Yeah, I mean, Chris from the Canadian team there, as Britt mentioned, definitely deserves a shout out. Let's see. Well, she's right about Toon Squad. I've told those guys before in FOM. They're one of my favorite teams just because they've grown, from a team that was kind of like a for fun team put together, and now they're serious. They show up and they all buy in, and it's just a team of friends and similar style players, which is really fun to watch. I'd give a shout out to Kevin Hill, who played on Double Tap. He subbed in for them, and I saw him playing really good all day long. He made some great catches in transition, which it benefits his game in the longer courts too. Let's see. Is it Lu Cas on OSU? Is it Pierre? Is he on that team right now? Is he the young kid who's kind of their Lu Cas Light? I think we've called him
Lu Cas Light.
Yeah.
Nice.
You want me to jump in? He's on my list.
Yeah, if
Yes.
that'll work.
Yeah, his name is Harley Nurheim
Harley, that's the
Carrick.
one.
And he is incredible. And if we could get him into Elite, he would love it. He's just like an all-around baller. He's got a great arm. He throws his body around. He goes for catches. Like, the OSU Dodgeball Club has produced some incredible players. I think Kevin Pack, Brandon Cook, Patrick Goodman, Michael White. Like, I think all of those guys are from out of there. Ashley Tyree. Like, they just they have such an incredible lineage of dodgeball beasts. So yeah, he was on my list. There was another guy on that team. I think it said Tank on the back of his jersey, but he was just a massive human being who had this incredible kind of clamp swinging throw that like had movement, but it exploded. It was kind of like Justin Pyan throwing like underarm or something. Like it was exceptional, and it was like blowing people up even though they had blocking balls. So he was just something to watch. I loved watching and playing against him. I wanted to give a shout out to Drew Jones on Double Tap. Drew is like a former NCDA player, if I'm not mistaken, and he's recently moved to Portland and has kind of connected with the dodgeballers there and is now playing in Elite on a Portland team. But he came up and he was looking great. He's scrappy. He's got a good throw. He's like a very tall player, but he goes for catches, and definitely seems like a guy that I would love to play with. So shout out to Drew. And the final player that I wanted to shout out was one and only Nico Nodal from Task Force. And it is a treat to watch that guy go. He is so smooth. Like he's never putting himself in a bad position. For those of you who don't know, Nico is on the U.S. Foam WDBF team.
Nice.
And he is amazing to watch. He's got this throw, kind of the way Pyan is on the court. Like, he's not going to flaunt his dominance, but he will use it when he needs it. And he's got this like overhand clamp throw that has wicked bend, and it just is explosive. And it was so fun. And I have a nagging back injury, so I was resting for a lot of round robin. But when we went up against them, like, I felt like I owed it to him. Like, I've never played against him, and I wanted to just go all out. And so we kind of like let that be known early on that we were going after each other. So we matched up as corners and we just went for it, and it was a blast. And, it was awesome to have Nico come out.
Nice.
I think I'd give one more just kind of blanket shout out to not just the ladies of Task Force. I made this shout out in the shout outs thread, but just the ladies in general, to see the North players come from a division that has a no co-ed and no women's, to play against the ladies of the Northwest and just constantly get caught. The amount of catches I saw Task Force throw, because they just would walk up to a lady and try to blast her right in the chest, and it just doesn't work.
And I would scold them afterwards and be like, that's what you get. I told you, don't do that.
Nice. So is there any, like, hopefully this isn't too much of a segue, but is there any hesitation for a lot of these teams that participate in the Seattle Classic into joining Elite, or are we going to maybe see more of them in the Portland stop coming up in May? Is that a possibility? And that anybody can take that question that might know.
Well, Britt, you've not traveled to play Elite. What are your thoughts on that? What would your hesitation be?
Well, my hesitations for not playing Elite so far has just been, adulting and prioritizing other things over traveling. But I'd like to get to that point. And I would very much like to play in this upcoming Elite tournament in Portland. So if anyone's interested, give me a shout. And I think, one thing that really makes a lot of people hesitate probably from Portland with going with Elite would be the headshots. we're pretty adamant here about protecting our faces and our brains. So the fact that it's, not illegal in elite is what is going to cause a lot of Portland people, at least in my opinion and in my perspective, from really diving into full-on travel competitive dodgeball.
Gotcha.
I think elite has a really interesting effect on local dodgeball scenes, because I think that like the creme de la creme of like every dodgeball community like wants a taste of elite. They like want to see like how they are going to fare, and then I think everyone who goes loves it. Like everyone who is a hardcore dodgeball player loves it, and then that the word kind of trickles down into the communities, and like people start seeing it as kind of this goal of theirs to participate in elite. And I think you see like people from Portland who aren't on Reignbros. Like every season there's like another Portland dodgeball team playing in elite, and like the word is getting out and people are having a good time. And I think slowly you're going to see that, and having round 2 of the West Elite in Portland I think is going to be great, because it's going to give people an opportunity to try it who maybe aren't ready to sink like hundreds of dollars into traveling to another city.
Hundreds, that's it.
Only.
Yeah, sink major money in traveling for dodgeball, and hopefully it'll give them a chance to try it and fall in love with it.
Gotcha.
I'd agree with that for sure. The travel is a drawback, and I mean, at one point there was a discussion of does the Northwest get its own elite division, or do we separate from the West? And I mean, I can tell you from the Reignbros perspective, it wasn't something we wanted. At least the current Reignbros, because we want to play against Doom. Like, we're lucky to be in the West Division and be able to play Doom and Rise, the teams who you're going to run up against on your way to the the national championship, as only they have ever won it, to my knowledge. So why for us it doesn't benefit us and help us get better if we end up in a position where we're not playing them. That's what we want. So.
Gotcha.
But it would be better probably for the rest of the Northwest players if we had a Northwest division.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's growing, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a new region showing up in the next 2 to 3 years. Would not be surprised at all. So I'm sure it's on its way. And I forget, for me, LA is like a 5-hour drive, so we're pretty spoiled when it comes to the Arizona teams, I guess. Kind of forgot that you guys have to kind of travel a bit of a distance, so that's a good point that Britt brings up. So kind of covered some of the teams and players that stood out. How about like specific events or specific plays? Anything? And Allyn, you can probably start this one. Any particular like events or matches that you recognize and remember and kind of are replaying in your mind again over and over?
Yeah, the footage hasn't come out. Once we get the film out, I'll end up watching all these matches at least 15 times. But the two that are still fresh in my mind are, and I'll start with this one, the losers final, which was a best of 3 between NSFW and Downpour. So Downpour, is an elite team. It was their exact roster, no one missing. The co-ed version, we play 5-2 basically. So it was more or less the open and the co-ed all together, which is a cool dynamic. And then NSFW is Lu Cas's team. It's not very similar to Fortune. In fact, I think Lu Cas and Mark Sweetgall, and then the ladies Lizzie and Melissa are the carryover, and then the other 3 or 4 guys are different. And man, this was a classic match. I don't remember much about the first 2 games other than that each team won one. But game 3 came down to Lu Cas against 5, and just there was nothing that could be done. There's one really tough call where a blocked ball got put up and Lu Cas threw, and to the refs it appeared that the ball was hit at the same time it was being caught, so a secured catch had not been made before the ball was hit and caused to be dead. But it would have swung the whole match. But after that, he went on to make a catch, hit an out or two, have the player he caught in step out of bounds for no good reason, and then continue to get the last, I believe there was 3 more players after that out. with just he just couldn't be hit. And his throw is, as we all know, if you take a step that's kind of on shaky ground, he's just going to hit you. It's happened to me all too many times. So that was a classic, and to just have a front row seat was a special thing to watch.
I'm still feeling the effects of one of those off-step hits from Lucas. My pinky still hurts. Thank you very much for that. I'll remember you for a couple weeks. So five.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, that game was kind of a blur because the event was running late, and I had been in like the staff office, like pleading with them to let me like rent more time. And, one of the guys was sympathetic, and he thought it was kind of cool what we were doing. And then the other staff person was just like, no, I'm putting my foot down. You guys gotta go. And so we had like an hour left, and we had 3 more matches to play. And like the first match took like half an hour, and so we had to like whittle down the final 2 matches to like best of 3, which was pretty disappointing. But so this was the 3rd game of the best of 3, and all the while, like as I'm last one in, I'm sitting there, I'm like, shame, this is taking too long. Sorry to swear again, Steve.
It's all good.
But I'm just hanging in there, but I'm just like, it's taking too long. Oh my God, we're not gonna have time for the final. And I don't know. It was one of those things where I definitely noticed like the extra 3 feet that we had is a 23-foot throw line, and so like I felt really comfortable on the back line and on defense. So I was just, kind of begging the opponents to group throw me, and I was throwing at people's legs and trying to just kind of break it apart. And Allyn, I'm glad you brought up that almost catch that Kyle had, because honestly, I thought it was a catch, and I was ready to walk off the court. But that was the game changer right there. And I think I had 2 catches, and both of my teammates got out at one point, and I was exhausted, but I was proud to put on a show for the Seattle fans who stuck around.
Nice.
It was a show indeed.
It was a show, and that's one thing that I really appreciated was it wasn't like throw one ball, wait for people to figure out who they're throwing to, and then throw another one ball. It was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of action. It's fun to watch.
It was a battle.
And that's what you want to see out of, your second to last game.
Definitely. I like what you said, Allyn, when you said 5v1 and nothing can be done. And I was like, for some reason I just took that as it's one of those situations where, like, I'm not surrounded by you. You guys are trapped in here with me, like type deals with Lucas maybe. And then it sounds like that's kind of how it played out. And then you have Lucas like, I got to wrap this up real quick. I'm just going to beat these 5 guys. No big deal. I'm sure that's not what you're trying, but
I have a kind of a running joke, and Lucas, it isn't with Lucas, it's with everyone who loses to him, that Lucas just has the ability to play the nope card. Like, you just try to run something against him, and he just flips over the nope card, and whatever you're trying to do falls apart and shambles, and your team loses. So that's special players, they have that power, and Lucas played a nope card right there.
That's hilarious. When I was talking to Sturge, he's like, yeah, we have this one play where it's like a 99% success rate, and then we threw out Lucas, and he just said no, and he caught it, and then I think you like push throw Tim, and so that must have been you activating your note powers right there. So I've not witnessed it firsthand, but I've heard firsthand accounts of this happening. So that's awesome, hilarious at the same time. What about you, Britt? Have any plays or events that you might have seen that stood out that you're still kind of replaying in your mind?
If we're moving on to another match, I was on task force, and one of our last matches we played was against Double Tap, and Double Tap put together a pretty good team, and we definitely could have lost. I think Brett Furlong was the last player in, and he had 3 balls come at him. He caught one. And then he brought in Eric Jones. Eric Jones just bam, bam, bam. I think he made like 2 or 3 catches with that.
Sounds like him.
And then they just shut down the game. But before they shut down the game, they did throw they did a team throw on my friend Paige. and she caught one of those balls. And honestly, I was very impressed with Paige all day. She made lots of great catches. She made 2 catches against Task Force, one that really probably left a sweet
left a great
right on her throat. Yeah, I hope it's on video somewhere, honestly. It's beautiful. But yeah, that was a great game. And Brett making that catch, then Eric Jones making multiple catches really saved us there.
That's an interesting match for you because you've played almost everyone on the other side of the court. You've played with them too. I mean, Aldo and Keith were on pizza with us. You played with Kevin on Autobots for a while. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of who else on that team you would have played with. I'm sure there's someone else, but
play with your dad.
And my dad, yeah, exactly. He played with us on Pandemic as well. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of knew both sides of that court, having played with Task Force all day and being able to give them, I'm sure, a scouting report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just said, hey, flat out, all catchers, be careful.
Just giving,
that's what that team was.
Yeah, Keith had I remember a specific play in that where Keith had a great bait on Eric Jones. He ran up across and kind of dumped a ball on the ground and just turned, and Eric Jones threw it right at him. And then later in the match, Eric Jones got him right back, and that's one of the big catches you were talking about at the end when he got caught in. And so a classic back and forth and big plays. Whitney had a great catch and out, as well as the one you mentioned by Paige. Just awesome all around.
And this wasn't Paige Peterson by any chance?
No, her name is Paige Dan Routher Silva. She's on
Rose City Raptors.
Rose City Raptors, yes, and Double Tap's co-ed elite team. Her husband is Aldo, who's also on that team.
Gotcha.
Double Tap.
Cool. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Allyn. Was there any other events that you were going to recap or?
Those are the 2 that I wasn't involved in that stand out to me. It stood out. Our match against NSFW in the winners final stood out to me because Lu Cas's nope card was completely ineffective. In fact, I think Tiffany played the nope card on him. So the very first line up and throw of the game is he took a shot at Tiffany from Reignbros, who's also on Witness, a very, very, very talented player. And I'm not even sure she was looking or ready to know he was throwing, but he put it right there and she snagged it. She also caught Tom, who elite players aren't familiar with, but when he's on his game, I mean, you can ask me, he's the second best player in the Northwest after Lu Cas. So she also caught him at a big point in the third game. Lu Cas threw me a catch and in the second game, and he was pretty upset about it in the third game, so he blasted me in the face. We handled them pretty well, and it's a talented team.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that game. That game was really, I think, you guys definitely asserted yourself as the top team of the day during that game. I think we lost 3-0.
Yeah.
That first game, I had my guy. I told someone to put pressure on Tiff so I could cross court her, and they pressured her. She jumped, and then as she lands, she turns to me, and it was almost like the ghost of Tim Fullerton, looking at me and gobbling my cross court, and it just gave me the creeps. And she had this look in her eyes, I got you. And it was, I knew that I was oh God, this is their day. They are gonna rock it. And so when we finally met again in the finals, it was almost like a swift and painless death. The shortened version.
The one game final. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember nothing of what happened in that game. So you mentioned that the last few matches got shortened, and the original plan was for the winners bracket team in the final to start up a game in a best of 7. Well, that's not a huge swing in a best of 7, but in a best of 3, it's kind of a big deal. So that the final was really not the final. I would say the winners bracket final was what I really took away as the final.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think one thing we should mention is that for whatever reason, over the years, we've decided that to bring emphasis to the final match, we make it a winner-take-all match. And even though the rest of the tournament is a double elimination. And so to give the winner's bracket team an edge, we always throw them an extra win. So this year's tournament, we were supposed to do a best of 7 in the finals. And the winner's bracket team was going to start with a 1-game lead. But because we were biting the bullet or looking down the barrel of the gun, so to speak, with time, we had to shorten the loser bracket semifinal to best of 3. And we had literally 10 minutes left in the finals. And it felt so cheap, but we had to do a best of 3, and we also gave the Reignbros a game edge. So they won 1 game, and it was over. But they would have won 4 if we had given them 4. We were outmatched. So it was definitely their day. So the right team won, and as the organizer, I was happy to have it over and get out of there.
I'll bet. Well, cool. So one thing I didn't want to forget and gloss over was one thing that I remember was very unique to the Classic was the joust. Lu Cas, you want to kind of just break down what that is and kind of just run me through how it went with this event? We can start with you.
Yeah, so I think every year we've done a joust tournament, which is essentially like a 1v1, almost showdown like dodgeball challenge. Over the years, the rules have changed, but currently there's no blocking allowed. You're only allowed to touch 1 ball at a time. So both players start kind of in the back of the court. They use full court, so you can move freely throughout the court, and it's full neutral zone, so you can go anywhere within the confines of the court. There's also 3 balls on the midline, so a lot of players start by running at the midline, throwing and diving for one of the balls, and then throwing again. It usually results in some pretty hilarious dodgeball plays and some goofy, amazing dodges and people throwing their bodies around. And this year we expanded the field to 64 players, and we had a new champion, Mike Lyons, and it was really cool. There was some, actually Trong from VDL, Vancouver Dodgeball League, made it into the Final 4, which was super cool because of their rubber inexperience, but it was awesome to see him make it that far. And another one of the underdogs who made it to the Final 4 was the captain of the Gonzaga Dodgeball Club, who last year got crushed, and they actually left the tournament before the knockout round started because they thought they wouldn't qualify for the knockouts. But he made it to the top 4, and yeah, the joust has been like an awesome, fun, kind of entertaining kind of side contest that happens at the Classic every year.
Nice.
Lu Cas, how many jousts have you won? How many of the Classics? You won like the first 3, didn't you?
I think I won the first 2. I think there was a typo. I think someone gave me an extra win, but back then I think blocking was allowed, and I think since we've moved to no block, like I suck.
I wouldn't go that far. But when you were saying that hilarious things ensue, anytime you put no block into a game of dodgeball where people normally can block, the best things happen. Because you forget that you can't block until that ball is literally inches from the ball that you're about to block it with. And so like some crazy contortion has to happen to make sure you don't block the ball, and I think that's my favorite part of it. But you mentioned some people who made the top 4, but actually we had all 4 rookies to the top 4, not rookies to playing, but the 4 people in the top 4 had never made the top 4, and that was the winner, Michael Lyons. Congrats to him. Max Doolin from Gonzaga, you mentioned the captain of that team. I knocked him out last year in the first round. He made the finals this year. Trung Cao from Canada, who knocked me out in my side of the bracket, which awesome. He crushed me. He was too fast. And then Kevin Hill, who we've mentioned for Double Tap, who made the semifinals as well, which is a great job for normally a tall player who's really just a great arm, not necessarily a mobile player. He really played it well to get his skill set to that point.
Nice. And Britt, did you play in this?
No, I usually don't play in the joust because I know the joust is cursed.
It's cursed?
It's true, actually. It's true. If you win the joust, you will not be a first place team. So I always do my team a favor and I don't play the joust because I believe in my team.
But Allyn, on the other hand, he wants to be Joust champion when he plays for Pizza, and then we lose to NSFW.
So the history of this curse is that 2 of the last 3 years prior to this year, so 15 and 17.
I'm thinking all of them.
They're all
15 and 17. So in 15, I was on Street Fighters. I won the Joust. One of my teammates also made the semifinal, and we played Beaver Damnation in the final and had literally nothing. Both of our hands were cramping shut. I had to leave the court due to it, and take a sub. And we lost 4-0 total sweep after in a heartbreaking match, knocking Lu Cas out. I'm sure he was happy to see us get swept. and then the next year I did not win, and we got top 4. And then the year after that, I won again with Pizza, as Britt mentioned, and we lost in the final to Lu Cas. So.
Well, Allyn, now that we've got you on the record, give us some tips. What are some of your Joust strategies?
Well, I mean, just like any part of Dodgeball, kind of anticipate who you're playing against. If you can get them to give up their ball, like if you say you're playing against a drop catcher, and you think if you fake well enough, they'll drop their ball without throwing it, that's an immediate game over. Because like you said, the whole court is open. There's boundaries on the out of bounds on the outsides, but there's no middle line. There's no neutral zone. Literally, if they screw up and drop their ball and have no ball, you can go an inch from them and bounce off whatever the part of their body you want. So if you can get them to drop their ball, that's strategy number 1. If you have the ability to throw while running full speed towards that center ball, that's the general strategy I use. I can throw while running and get to that ball before anyone else can. So even if they don't throw their ball, the fact that they have to dodge my ball gives me enough time to get another ball and be ready to throw before they can adjust. So those are the general 2 strategies, is either get them to drop their ball or throw it in a place where they have to dodge to give me enough time to get that second ball and just use my speed and athleticism.
Nice. Plus you're taking away blocking, so they can't...
Exactly, which throws in the dodge, like we talked about. When you are used to blocking and you put a ball that's right at where they would block, the dodge that comes from it is usually debilitating.
I'm sure, off step and everything. Cool. I don't really have much questions about the Joust. I'll bet it was just pretty exciting and different than Showdown, which I think is I don't want to say it's a standard, but when you think 1v1, I think that's what people imagine now is like a 5 foot distance from the person, or something incredibly small and shallow. So and maybe this is more for Allyn, do the Joust skills translate into Showdown?
They somewhat do. It's the only the biggest difference is obviously the blocking, and in a hallway, which essentially in the Showdown you're playing in a hallway. The blocking is so big. If you can block any part of you, you're effective blocker, which that's what when Vince Marchbanks won last year, his huge advantage was that he is such a good blocker that if you threw your ball first, you probably weren't hitting him, and then he's tall, athletic, fast, throws really hard. He covers to that center line, so even if you throw it while on the run, you're probably not going to get to that second ball in the middle before he can hit you. So they somewhat translate. I made the semifinal in the West of the Showdown last year. So some of those skills translate. If you're an all-around athletic player, you're going to be able to be good at both. I strongly prefer the Joust just because there's so many more things that can happen in a full court. Without blocking, it sort of changes up your instincts of the game. And I don't like the constriction of a hallway, just like so little space that you can do anything in. It takes away some creativity that can happen. I'm sure, we see quite a lot of creativity in the Showdown. We've seen, like the pump fake that threw Cliff out of bounds. We've seen that clip going around the last couple days. So just stuff like that. I couldn't imagine some of the creativity that people like Vince or like Mark Acom have. That what they could do in a Joust, like how many cool different things could happen. I know I've hit people out by throwing through my legs before. Just catching them off guard, a ball comes from between my legs and they freeze. So there's just things like that you could do in a full court game with no blocking that would just add way more variables.
Gotcha. So earlier, Britt, you mentioned, and this is kind of like a segue into a different topic. You mentioned something about what should teams be working on if they wanted to elevate their game and break into the top 4. Do you feel like that's a fair question for you to take?
Well, I can comment on it, and I'd also like to hear what Lu Cas and Allyn have to say, since they've been on really great teams in Elite.
Sure.
But all of the teams that I've been on in the Seattle Classic have been very organized, and Pizza was the most organized team I've been on. We always had play calls, and we stuck to them. And I think that once you really start communicating and you slow down the game, you don't let it get away from you, you can control the game. And the team that does that the best, I mean, now that we have Reignbros playing in the Seattle Classic, they do it extremely well too, but Not Safe for Work has the craziest play calls. I've never ever been able to figure it out. I'm not sure what they're doing.
Burrito, Space Laser, Lion, Nintendo. She just yells words, yeah.
I've never figured it out. It's just fake after fake after fake, and then bam, someone's throwing at you and you're not sure where it's coming from. And it's not always a group throw, it can be a single throw. But I think that, if teams can just really get together and be consistent and have these play calls, they're going to do a lot better than if they just wing it.
Right.
And I think just the day before in a Facebook group chat, just, hey, this is what we're doing. This is our fake call. And, even just a number system is going to work for you over just showing up and playing and expecting, your best player to pull you out.
Gotcha. Then, Lucas, you want to go ahead and add to that, maybe?
Yeah, totally. I think I used to pride myself on having like all these different like codes, communication codes, verbal codes on court to play call, and I think the most extravagant one that we ever came up with was each player on our team had a code name. The targets on the opposing team were all named after Star Wars movies. So we had like Return, Revenge, Hope, Empire. So we were like screaming like 5 different, like a string of 5 different variables. And like we had fakes that were like white, black, and gray. And so there was just like nonsense. It was like Cupid, Hope, Revenge, Black, Square, and like it was really cool because you could be really precise about your play call. However, it was just way too much. So I used to think teams like Rise that huddled all the time were just like so primitive, but honestly, I've been having my teams huddle now, and I think it just makes sure that everyone is on the same page. It allows you to synchronize everything, and so even if it's just a solo throw, the other team doesn't know where it's coming from, and it's so much more effective. So I really recommend the huddle to everyone. I mean, just swallow your pride, huddle, and run a awesome play.
Oh, you sailor, you. So to add, I mean, I think there's a dodgeball rule that everyone shouts. That's the worst rule that you could ever play by, and that's no solos. Every team has to solo to win. Have you ever seen a team win a game when they didn't throw solo throws? If you're throwing group throws every time, you may get one person out, and then the other team has all the balls, and they're going to get 3 of you out. No solos is the wrong lesson to take away from someone throwing a bad solo throw. The best thing that you can do is throw good solos. Any team can win if their one solo gets 1 out, and it's a 90-10 or 90-30, 60-30-10. If it's 60% out, 30% miss, 10% catch. You throw at that ratio, you're going to win at a really high clip. And the best way to do that is to have all of your team on the same page, have some sort of call system where if you don't have time to huddle, you can figure out what you're doing, have good fakes, and make sure whoever's not throwing is properly marking a target. So the standard in Elite is that the 2 corners mark and the center person throws. And that is a standard that we kind of mixed up when we came. That's not something we usually do. The other standard is that you throw that burden ball. When you have 3, you throw the one ball that everyone knows you have to throw. Well, why would you do that? Everyone knows you have to throw that ball. So we also changed that standard. And so in a 4 and 3 ball, the Seattle Classic plates with 7. But the advantage is the side that has 4 balls has to throw. If you throw 2, you're left with 2 balls. It's not as bad as being left with 1. But if you can always keep 3 and only throw 1, that's a better situation than having 2. So I would say to get better, find a way to make sure you're getting consistent outs without throwing consistent catches with only throwing 1 ball at a time. And I know, Britt, you mentioned you wanted a lot of back and forth play, and that's what's exciting. But if you're going to get better, you've got to be able to throw effective solos.
That's fair.
Point taken.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and I love when this happens. You'll have like both teams will just break discipline, as I call it, and they'll have like a run and gun, like almost free for all. And God, that is so exciting to watch. Versus, okay, Rise is gonna throw, cool.
Huddle and one throw.
Okay, Doom's gonna throw.
That's so boring.
It's effective. It's boring though.
I get it. It wins.
Well, and there's a time. I mean, there's certainly a time to shift gears. I mean, that's Doom's what Doom does is if they shift gears and they go into an exchange and they win those exchanges almost every time. Their players are really good at not throwing catches in those exchanges. They're really good at coming out ahead with the ball advantage and ahead in the trade. So they initiate those a lot, and they take advantage of when other teams initiate them poorly. Rise is the opposite. Rise is very, very good at denying that exchange from ever happening. So if you'll see Rise and a team tries to rush them, and their defense immediately shields up. Nothing you can do. You're just wasting balls at that point. Yep. And then at the end of the game, when it advantages them, they'll run you down if you leave yourself out of position. So, I mean, those are things to watch. Before I ever went and played in any single elite game, I knew all of those teams in the West. We knew Titan, we knew Deathball, we knew Doom, we knew Rise. We knew what they could do. I came in ready. So just watch film. I mean, that's the last thing I could recommend. Watch the game.
Maybe you should be a coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, there might be positions open in 10, 20 years from now when...
You need a manager, which would actually be very interesting if some teams start to get team managers. If they don't already exist.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. I mean, I don't want to divulge my age, but I'm obviously a lot older than most people, so I'm sure I've got maybe 4 or 5 years tops, if that, left. And I wonder, is it going to be really easy to walk away from the dodgeball scene, or am I going to try to figure out some way to kind of still stay involved? And at the rate things are growing, and how much dodgeball has evolved, I would not be surprised if some kind of team management position is there or needed, as well as a coach, and B, if I'd be willing to even do that, because it's really fun working with rec league teams and trying to I won't say show them the ropes, but just lending your experience and helping them grow. Like, that's one of my most rewarding favorite things to do is watching somebody come off the streets, never hold a dodgeball in their life, and then turn into somebody spectacular. It's always fun to be a part of that journey and know that you may have had just a slight hand in it. So I could see it happening. So one of these questions, or one of the questions I wanted to ask, and this is, I think, mostly aimed at Lu Cas, was, were there any events, actually just kidding, that's the wrong one. I was going to ask, is there anything that you would have done differently for this tournament? Kind of bringing it back to the Classic.
Yeah, I think this year we were running late, and so I think a lot of my takeaway from this year is strategies to kind of keep us on time or save time. So I think some of those that I was thinking about over the last 48 hours, I think we're ready to jump to like using software to track the round robin stats. So I know that Jake and Nick Factorin are always on a laptop at their events, and I think some of them use like Challenge or like Smash GG. I know there's a lot of different softwares out there, so I'm going to look into that between now and next year. I think that'll speed up the seeding process so that the seeds are ready as soon as the round robin is done. I think some of the other things I was thinking about was potentially shortening the knockout round matches, because it is a currently it's a best of 5 double elimination. I might
That's generous.
consider moving that to a best of 3 double elimination, and then keep the finals best of 5 with like a winner's bracket advantage. I think another alternative to that, which would, I think, definitely be in the spirit of the Classic, would be adding in like the no block at, you know, the 12-minute mark or at the 10-minute mark, kind of the way that Sin City does. And I think that would kind of vibe with the identity of the Classic. What do you guys think, Allyn and Britt?
Britt, your thoughts?
Well, I definitely like if you need to speed up play, to say what you guys do in the Seattle street dodgeball, you make the courts smaller. I think that could make things really interesting too, because no block is really hard to transition. If you told me to no block, I would block and I'd be out. It's just what would happen, you know. But if you squeeze the courts and, you know, make it so that somebody who's always going to drop catch is maybe going to be in a lot of trouble, but give me the opportunity to make my throw a lot more dangerous, I'd be down for that.
See that?
That's awesome.
I like the idea of cutting the losers bracket down to best of 3, not necessarily the winners. But also, I mean, this is the Seattle Classic. It's become really competitive, but with us drawing teams to an area where most of the players who play in the Classic, over half, aren't going to Elite. They're not traveling to Sin City. This is probably their only opportunity in the year, if not maybe ever. Some of them might only come to this event once to play people from, you know, Task Force, to play people from SDL and BDL, or the people in Seattle who don't travel. This is probably those people's only chance to play when Fury and Payan came, or Dildon'ts, and it had Nate and Alex Alvarez. So the spirit of the Classic, for me, I think that I would say I would almost go back to the single elimination, make the bracket just a quick and sweet winner at the end, and get as much round robin, get every team playing every team in round robin, so you don't end up leaving without a chance to play that player that you've heard all that much about and, you know, never played before. And now you were at a tournament with them and you never got to play against them.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And I guess, like, for word to everyone out there, I throw my experimental ideas at Allyn, because he's so highly critical that I know that he will kind of like puzzle break any idea I have and spit it back to me with some good feedback. So I like that idea a lot. Though single elimination is just so sudden and immediate.
It's
so
taboo
final.
now. Elite has made it taboo. Everything we used to do was single elimination. Recent time never did double. The Classic was never double. When was anything ever double until Elite made it the standard? But the difference is we try to cram in 5s and 7s, and they do everything 3s. So honestly, I would say best of 5s all the way is probably about the same amount of games as best of 3s double. I mean, maybe it's 1 or 2 more games every 2 or 3 matches, but it's not that big a difference really. And then you cut out the time of changing, adding extra brackets, filling out the bottom end. It sucks maybe for those teams at the lower end who only got to play 1 game and they were out in the bracket. But if you give them the chance to play everyone in round robin, then I think you're easing some of that pain.
Yeah. I think another kind of going back to the initial prompt of things we would do differently. There was a couple things I wanted to try this year. I wanted to build a championship court, and our plan was for like the quarterfinals and semifinals, we were going to schedule all the matches on one side of the gym, and simultaneously we were going to build kind of this spectator-friendly dodgeball court like in the center of the other basketball court, and we were going to like put 2 back nets behind the end lines and then bring the bleachers in on all sides and kind of try to make this like really intimate, almost like Madison Square Garden setting. And with the time restrictions and just everything that was happening, we scrapped it last minute. But that is something that I really want to get in there, because I think the Classic, more than most tournaments, traditionally has been a tournament where people stay till the end and really like celebrate the champions. And I want that to be part of the event. I want people to get excited about those final matches, about doing the joust finals right before the championship. I want people to stick around and like almost fight to get a good seat for that stuff. And I think that's going to be a priority for me next year.
Nice. I don't think you can go wrong with that. That's a great idea to me.
Awesome. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I made this comment, I guess, early on before it got out of control, shout outs. So there's a Facebook shout out post or thread going on, and I was like, I'm going to literally read all of these until I saw that there's just way more than I could possibly cover. So I'm going to kind of land on you guys, and Britt, maybe you can go first. Are there any people in particular you just want to shout out that may not have received it yet, whether they helped with the tournament or just were just awesome in general? I think I saw somebody like washing the balls. Is that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was really interesting. I'm still not very sure what happened, but the balls were perfect. They were squishy, but also like just still had a lot of zing and hadn't lost their shape or anything. They were just great new balls, and Bill Fisher, I think, stuck them in the dryer and did really magical things to them. And I appreciated it. Sometimes balls are just too heavy and too hard and not really pliable on, these fingers that are now probably arthritic. I also think we didn't talk about it, but there's also a cookout that goes on during joust. Some of the joust guys don't really get to appreciate it, but it's a great cookout, and there's even vegan friendly options. Nice. I partook and enjoyed beverages, and I spent a free hot dog. So I think the people who are involved in the cookout need their shout out. I want to say Farm was involved. Lu Cas, if you could help me out with other people who were part of the cookout.
Yeah. Every year we have like a potluck going in the parking lot where there's a barbecue grill, and that starts up around 11 a.m. and it just goes the whole day. And usually when there's missing players, you know where to find them. They're out at the barbecue. Exactly. And I always ask them, I'm like, can you guys move the barbecue closer to the gym so we can, yell and be in earshot? And they're like, there's too many adult beverages being made for us to be close to the gym. So they keep their distance, but it's awesome. And I think between the knockout and the round robin, there was like 50 people out there just hanging out. And I went out there at one point, and I was like, "All right, guys, we gotta go back to the dodgeball." It was awesome. But Foam and
Robert Mode,
were out there.
Yeah,
Rotten Rob is one of our foam dodgers, and he grilled like for 8 hours.
Dang, that's awesome.
It was. It's always intense. That's been a great part of the classic every year. You have a hot dog in the middle, and then you come back and you're bloated.
Allyn, do you have any shout outs you want to give?
I'd give a shout out to the Roy Bits minus Roy, and that's one of the younger teams that Britt mentioned. Some people from Dono who are playing with them now, and to play without your captain. They just played together in Elite the week before. They picked up Dan Lincoln, I believe, to play with them, and Don Leanne traveled up from Arizona to play with them, and they put up a heck of a fight in the round robin. I reffed the first match of it with them against Dano, and it went to 5, and it was just back and forth. Every player made a play, and so that was a lot of fun. I'd give a shout out to them for sure. A shout out. I mean, you made this thread right before the kind of we need help with all of this thread, and then you had the 8 or 10 different things you kind of needed people to help with throughout the day. So, I mean, huge shout out to just that kind of community organization. And that's what Seattle is. I mean, there's no one in the country, no group of dodgeball that I've witnessed that can just assign out some tasks and say, here's what we need people to do. And you have someone proficient and that fits their skill set, and they'll step into that and help, whether it's the front desk registration with Jeremy and Andrea, or setting stuff up with Travis and Keith and some of your other folks there, just all over the place. Excellent.
Nice. I did want to say Steve Druitt. Yeah, Yeah, he said, shout out to the honesty from the competition. People call themselves out more often without designated refs than the other way around in my experience. So that's always an awesome thing that takes place. It just adds to the awesomeness of the event. I'm kind of just like going through some of these shout outs, but do you guys have any others? That's just a ton.
Yeah, I wanted to. I always make a point of it to do a big thank you post, so all those people know that I'm forever in debt to them, and I will, I'll be there for them whenever they need help. But there's a couple other people I wanted to shout out. I wanted to shout out my teammate Philip Hughes, who had never played rubber dodgeball before. But the night before the tournament, I realized my back was in such bad shape that we needed help. We needed someone who could stand in. And Phil is a new player who's been playing foam, and he played in our competitive foam league. And he's just a great team player. He's really aware. He's only played for 2 seasons, but I see awesome things for Phil in the future. And so I was really excited to invite him to join our team. And it was a lot. It was a lot for him to like jump in and play on one of the most competitive teams where I demand a lot from our teammates. But he made the most of it, and he he got in trouble with his wife for staying late because the tournament ran so late. But he cashed in some of his relationship points to stay late with us, and so yeah, I really thank him for that. And it was awesome playing with him.
I guess an unshout out to Peter, who thought the March Madness was more important.
Unshout out,
Also, shout out to Chicago Task Force for coming down and let me play with them. But also, there was engagement that happened with Chicago Task Force right after the Seattle Classic. So, congrats to Britt and Hannah.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
was that might be a first ever at the Classic.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give a shout out to everyone who came out to the after party. That's becoming one of my favorite parts of the Classic. We take over this small saloon, and it's a great opportunity to just mix and share stories. And it was great getting to meet the task force guys in person and hear their dodgeball stories and kind of share that and just have that relationship forever.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's very cool. And I'm sure there isn't an event out there like this, but I'll ask anyway. Is there anything like this, or is this just like a one-time deal? You better be ready in next year for March because it's going to sell fast. Or are there any other competitions that happen that might have as much appeal or similar appeal as this event? And Lucas, this might be more for you.
Yeah, Steve, are you thinking like Northwest events or just any nationally that I've experienced that are similar?
I think nationally, for people that are down to travel and maybe they can travel freely, but they want to try something else too. So.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to go to Sin City. I think that was really the first event that I went to that had that blend of community and competition. The first year I went by myself, and I played on a team of elite ringers, and we kicked.
Shame!
There was just so much love, and I think I walked in the door and I get just slapped on the
shame,
and I turn around and it's Ish Blanco, and I don't think Ish and I had ever spoken to each other, but like I knew right then that like this was a place where everyone was welcomed, and if you loved dodgeball, you were going to be having a good time. And so I wholeheartedly recommend Sin City for anyone who hasn't been. Another event that I want to recommend is the Vancouver Dodgeball Tournament of Champions. They do this annually, and it's kind of the best teams from a lot of leagues in Canada, and they play 8.25 foam, and it is bad.
Shame.
I think last year there was like 45 teams in the competitive bracket and maybe like 16 teams in the rec bracket.
Wow.
And they are a well-oiled machine. They run a tight ship up there. I think their leagues their leagues are close to like 1,500 players. It is insane. And the dodgeball is super fast paced. It was so much fun. So those are my favorite events, Sin City and the TOC. And I'm going back to the TOC, and I'm trying my best to get some elite players from the States to go up there too.
Nice. I'll keep that in mind.
That would have been the exact 2 tournaments I would have brought up. Nice. I've not been to TOC. I plan to go this year, but from everything I saw, he's exactly right to mention it. Alongside the likes of, the legendary Sin City, and in our hearts, the legendary Classic. So absolutely. Awesome.
How about you, Britt? Any others, or do you kind of echo what they're saying?
I'm still, feeling like maybe I'm a bit new, and the Seattle Classic is my highlight. But I definitely want to add some more tournaments to my toolbox so that I can get to know more people, and I feel like I'm going to be in a position to start doing that pretty soon.
Nice.
Actually, I've done trampoline dodgeball just for fun, and I really would be interested in trying it out ultimate style.
UDC.
That would be fun.
Women's UDC is coming this year, so
it's a thing now.
Make sure that it's known that you want to play, and I bet you'll get to.
Get swooped up right away. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, before we go ahead and close, just want to go round table real quick. Any final thoughts or last minute, I can say alibis, but yeah, just final thoughts, and we'll go ahead and start with Allyn.
No, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I think that this is something that dodgeball, that's not only great for the community, but podcasts are like this huge thing in our world right now. And so it's a great way to tie dodgeball into things that, everyone is a part of their day-to-day lives now. So the Classic is an amazing tournament. Seattle and Lu Cas works really hard to put it together. Bill, it needs to be mentioned as well. Mark Acomb, you need to get in touch with Bill and figure out what he does to those balls so that our balls at the elite rounds are like that. If you need a dryer in Portland to do that, I'd be happy to help. But they're just, they feel like they're already played, but that they're not worn, which you don't want them to be, flat and have none of the texture on them, but you want them to be just a little more squishy and not the crappy kind of uneven rubber that a lot of times those balls come with. And this really helps with that.
For sure. How about you, Britt?
I think, if you check out the Seattle Classic website or, the Facebook page, it's very apparent that it's a great, marketed product. It's very beautiful what they put together. And I think what draws me to it so much is that it seems like it's for really anyone who enjoys dodgeball, not just people who are super competitive. And, that's a really important thing to have, especially when, you want to attract, a diverse group of people. So, when you come here, you're going to have fun and you're going to get a lot out of it because they really put a lot into it.
Nice. Yeah, and now, like I said, I played 5 years ago, and it still was one of the better, more fun, engaging tournaments that I participated in. So I definitely like what Seattle's up to, and I would love to play in some open gym out there one of these days if I ever make it back out there. And last but not least, Lucas, any final thoughts? Alan's dying over there.
Yeah,
Bless you.
Yeah, the Classic has been, I guess, kind of a staple in my dodgeball life, and it's kind of an honor to carry the baton for this time period, and I'm trying to make sure that the culture and everything is intact, so that when I'm spent, I can pass the baton on, and the tradition is going to continue, and it's going to continue to be an awesome thing that people can share and come together and have a great time. I think the Seattle dodgeball scene is a special thing, and I think the Classic is our way of sharing what we have here with everyone who travels and wants to be a part of that. And anyone who's on the fence, just get in touch with me and let me know you're interested, and we'll make it happen in the future.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll go ahead and end it there. Alrighty, so there you have a recap of the 8th annual Seattle Classic tournament that took place this past weekend. And what fun that was for me personally to get to live it through the multiple perspectives of Allyn, Britt, and Lucas. Guys, thank you again so much for helping me recap what took place. I'm very honored that you guys would take the time to help me provide a thorough review of everything. So thank you so much for helping source questions, asking each other questions. That was awesome. And thank you so much just again for being willing to shed some insight on everything, especially since I wasn't there. It sounds like a lot has evolved since I last played with Beaver Damnation in 2013. And while I missed this one, I'm definitely bummed, but I'm more excited to make sure I make it to 2019. So I'll be ready once that announcement is dropped. Trust me. Before I sign off, if you are listening to this podcast and you have not heard the Lucas episode with the Book of Dodgeball with David Tates, first off, you're wrong, and secondly, you can make this wrong right by giving it a listen. So check it out. I highly recommend it. It is a great dive into the mind of one of Dodgeball's, I want to say rising stars, but it sounds like he's been pretty established for a while. So definitely check it out. I found it incredibly motivating and inspiring to continue producing content for the Dodgeball scene and just staying involved. It is truly a gift that keeps on giving, and that has proven time and again for me over and over, event after event and episode after episode. And as always, your feedback, suggestion, questions and comments and whatnot, all that good stuff is always welcome. And I look forward to it. It just, again, makes this podcast better and better. But until the next episode drops, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. It's the nope card. You're like, nope, I will do what I wish.
Yep, exactly. You had a plan, and he's like, nope.
Yep, not gonna do it.
Sorry, Steve.
Nah, it's all good, man. It's not that bad, so don't worry about it. It'll just be funny because we'll all know, like, we're all eyeballing. I think every time he swore it, like, Allyn just looked at me like, I got him. Just see if I'm gonna react.